Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into Bitcoin. It's a really fascinating area touching on tech, finance, global stuff. Our goal here is to pull out the key takeaways from the material we've looked at,
Yeah.
basically giving you a solid handle on things. And we're zeroing in on right now, June 19th, 2025. The big question really is, is Bitcoin finally growing up, becoming less volatile, more like a global financial player?
Yeah, and understanding what's happening right now is super important if you want to get a grip on digital assets generally. The current situation tells us a lot about its maturity and maybe more importantly, where it might be headed. Are we moving past just speculation?
Okay, so let's unpack that. The sources mentioned this trading range, $108,000 to $110,000. It's been holding pretty steady there. What does that stability, despite little ups and downs, actually tell us?
Well, what's kind of fascinating here is that holding steady right around 109K, even when traditional markets have been pretty jumpy lately, it suggests Bitcoin might be decoupling a bit, moving away from that purely speculative tag it used to have. The analysis we saw looking at institutional reports, it suggests they're treating it more like digital gold. And that really builds confidence in the market overall, shows a kind of foundational strength.
Right, digital gold. And that ties into maturity, I guess. Another big thing from the sources. This strong ongoing interest from institutions. We're seeing some pretty notable names exploring Bitcoin for the long haul. Here's where it gets really interesting. What's pushing them in now? And did the sources flag any downsides to this big money coming in?
Well, if you connect the dots, it looks like a sophisticated hedge. It's tied to all the global economic uncertainty we're seeing. Institutions, pension funds, corporate treasuries, they're looking hard at Bitcoin to diversify. They want alternatives, especially with inflation worries and geopolitical shifts. The main concern highlighted wasn't really a red flag, more like a question mark. Does all this institutional money start to centralize what was meant to be decentralized? That's something to watch.
Okay, interesting dynamic. But it's not just about the money flowing in, right? The tech itself is still evolving. The sources talk about improvements to the blockchain, making things like scalability and security better.
Yeah, and these tech upgrades are really key for Bitcoin actually being used. The sources point to things like the Lightning Network getting wider use for small, fast payments. That's huge. It moves Bitcoin closer to being, practical for everyday stuff, not just big investments. And also the Taproot upgrade, it's kind of subtle, but it improves privacy and efficiency. Both of these things help market confidence because they make Bitcoin more viable, more usable. We saw examples like in places where normal banking is difficult, Bitcoin is actually facilitating payments.
You make sense? Okay, what about the regulators? The sources mention regulatory scrutiny is still ongoing around the world. Has all that talk, all the discussions actually changed Bitcoin's path much or created new problems?
You know, Despite all the chatter in different countries, the sources suggest no single big announcement has really knocked Bitcoin off its course. The conversation about clear rules is definitely happening, and in some areas, like parts of the EU, it's getting more solid. But the general feeling among investors seems to be cautious optimism. Think about it, 10 years ago, central banks wouldn't even acknowledge Bitcoin. Now, sources show several are actually looking into digital currency strategies themselves. That shows a big shift in perception.
Wow, yeah, that's a definite shift. Okay, last piece, global adoption. Beyond the big institutions, the sources say more people worldwide are using Bitcoin.
Yes, and what's really telling is where and why. Adoption is particularly strong in places dealing with, say, economic volatility or where people need alternatives to the traditional financial system. The material had case studies, South America, parts of Africa where hyperinflation or capital controls are major issues. There, Bitcoin is offering a real lifeline for sending money, for basic transactions. It's not just theory. It really highlights the search for stability for different financial options globally.
Okay, so pulling it all together, what does this mean for you listening in, trying to understand this space? We've talked about Bitcoin's current market stability, the growing interest from big money and regular people globally, and the tech and regulatory factors playing into it.
Right. Understanding how these pieces fit together gives you that fuller picture. It helps you see past just the daily price swings and grasp Bitcoin's potential evolution, in the bigger financial world.
So here's a final thought to chew on. Given Bitcoin's steadier performance lately and how it's being adopted in these volatile regions, how might its role as a global alternative keep growing, keep challenging traditional finance in the years ahead? Definitely something to think about as it keeps quietly but significantly reshaping things.